going on, guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, here with Jordan Ellis to preview UFC 262. But before we get into that, we had a UFC Fight Night this past weekend. Marina Rodriguez taking on Michelle Waterson. Jordan, what did you think of the event overall?
It was a tough one, wasn't it? Because we lost a couple of fights on the weigh-in day, especially Angela Hill against Amanda Ribas, which was one I was particularly looking forward to. I was saying maybe they should be headlining this card. I really did like that fight. We lost Diego Sanchez as well, which was a tough one. So yeah, and one of the big heavyweight fights. So it weren't the best. It did all come to bits, but it's, we had some good performances there. Obviously, Alex Morono pulled off a great upset, and Marina Rodriguez and Michelle Waterson looked good. Neil Magny got a big win, so there was some standout moments. It just obviously we're not going to lie, it weren't the best UFC card, but we're moving on to a better one this week.
Yeah, and I suppose we'll just gloss over a few of the fights before we do move on. I'll just touch on the main event. Obviously, Marina Rodriguez looked pretty sensational in the early goings of the fight. I thought she was dominating the whole thing except for the third round, one of the rounds where she got held down. But aside from the round where she's got out-wrestled, I thought she dominated the whole fight. The commentary going to the judges was like, oh, this could be a close one. I hate to be the judges. But I just didn't see it that way. I thought Marina Rodriguez put a hurt on her in the first two rounds. So how do you see it?
Yeah, and I felt the same. I thought it was a pretty clear victory. Michelle Waterson did well to, peg it back and make it kind of close. But for me, it was, if Marina Rodriguez didn't get that win, it would have been a robbery. And that's what we would have been speaking about right now. It was a good performance. She dominated Michelle Waterson for large parts of that fight. Is, only because she's so tough and she's so, gritty that she was able to stick in there and see the final bell. So, yeah, really, really good fight. But it's two strawweights fighting a flyweight. It's not what we wanted really from this main event. And Marina Rodriguez, she looked good. She'll move on. And Michelle Waterson's still a big name, so I'm sure she'll get another big fight soon.
Yeah, you'd think so. We'll jump to the co-main event then. Donald Cerrone got finished again for the fourth time in a row. Fourth time in his last 6 losses. So he's had 6 losses in a row, 4 come by finish. This is a first round TKO for Alex Morono, and it just looked like once Cowboy got caught, it was over. He shelled up, and it was a good call by the ref to stop it on the feet. What is next for Cowboy? What do you think? Should he keep fighting or?
I don't know if there's any. I don't want to obviously have a go at Alex Morono, but he's not necessarily a top level guy. He's and I don't think he's ever going to be a champion or anything like that. So I thought this was a good fight for Cerrone, where he'd be able to pick Morono apart over a few rounds and get a decision win. Pettis was able to do it, and as we've seen, Pettis is not at his top anymore. So I was kind of surprised. Alex Morono is not necessarily some devastating puncher either, so to see him curl up like that, I honestly don't know what you do with Donald Cerrone now. I think anyone else would be cut for this type of run. I know it's technically 5 wins and 1 draw, but he got beat by Nico Price all ends up. It was just lucky that a point got took. So 6 losses. Alex Morono, is there any further down to go than Alex Morono? He's not even ranked, so it's a tough one. I don't think Donald Cerrone's getting cut. I think he's done too much for the UFC. It's just, who does he fight next? I honestly don't know.
I think you do the Nick Diaz fight and then he rides off into the sunset, right? Because Nick Diaz is looking to come back. He wants an opponent. I don't like the idea of giving him Kazmat Chimaev or any of these top guys. Other than Masvidal, I'd be interested in seeing that one. That'll be fun. But I think a Cerrone fight would make sense for both guys where they're at in their career. And if Nick Diaz comes out and just wipes the floor with Cerrone, then you can justify throwing him to these hungry lions. Do you think that's a good fight for Cerrone to have as his last one in the UFC?
Yeah, I don't know if the UFC will want to make that. I do think Nick Diaz, just because of how big his star he is and how much money he's going to demand, he's going to have to go in with a bigger name than Cerrone, maybe a Masvidal or someone along them lines if you're trying to avoid the youngsters. Do they want it? How can you sell a guy, Nick Diaz, who hasn't won? I think he hasn't won since
2013 or something.
2011 or something crazy like that. He hasn't won since then. Cerrone hasn't won in 6 fights. So how would you sell that? I'm not sure it's sellable, but that would be a cool fight. I'm just not sure from the UFC's point of view that's what they'll go for. I want to see Cerrone just literally drop down to the bottom of the barrel, like the worst fighter in the lightweight division. give him them and work your way back up. Because if he puts some streaks together against these guys, he can get another chance. But he's been floating at the top for too long, and it just seems like even guys outside the top 15, he's not able to deal with anymore.
Yeah, and so we won't spend too much time on this card. The last performance I want to highlight was Gregor Gillespie taking the win over Diego Ferreira. I thought that Ferreira's jiu-jitsu would be a factor in this fight. I thought he'd just have too much threats off the ground, but those scrambles were incredible to watch. Both guys seemed to be well-versed in what was going on there, and Gillespie, while he was gassed in that first round and finished that first round, looked like he had nothing left in the tank. In the second, he came out and just dominated and managed to get the TKO victory. The second person to finish Ferreira by TKO.
Yeah, he looked fantastic. It was obviously he's had that long layoff after a bad knockout, and to come back against someone like Diego Ferreira is really tough. He's a good fighter. He looked good against Beneil Dariush, although he lost. He had a streak before that, including the win over Anthony Pettis. So he looked brilliant, and but he came out overweight, which is obviously a big no. And Gregor Gillespie, smashed him in the second round. It was a brilliant performance. It gets him straight back up there. I'm not sure if I think he was ranked Diego Ferreira. I think he was in the top 15. So Gregor Gillespie slips straight back into the rankings, and he gets a big fight after this. And also the one fight tonight. So I think Gregor took all the 100K home with him. So he's had a brilliant night. He's the winner of this event.
Yeah, no, I forgot that. That's a good point. But I think Ferreira was ranked number 12 heading into this, so Gillespie probably moved to number 12 himself, or maybe even a little higher. And I could see him fighting a Paul Felder next. You could see him fighting someone like who's Dan Hooker. I feel like one of those fights makes sense, because you think about it, he was booked again to fight Brad Riddell, who was not even ranked in his fight from before, and he takes on the number 12 guy. I believe he was number 14 going into this as well. He was ranked. So, yeah, this win does a lot for him. I think it puts him pretty close to title contention. 2 or 3 fights and he'll be there. The fight I would love to see, just off the top of my head, is Islam Makhachev versus Gregor Gillespie. Just because when Khabib was running about, everyone was saying how this Gillespie guy's going to come through the ranks and give him his hardest test because of his wrestling caliber. Khabib's gone. Makhachev's there. That's an entertaining fight to me.
Yeah, there's loads of entertaining fights, and just because his wrestling credentials makes it that entertaining as well. It'd be interesting to see how far he can go off the back of that. Obviously, he did struggle in that early round. He has been knocked out in his previous fight, but he didn't look, a fighter who was shot or, lacking confidence or anything like that. He looked fantastic against a really good fighter who, as we said last time, he won one more round against Beneil Dariush. He's the one fighting Tony Ferguson right now. So it really is that tight in this lightweight division. It's just one win against a certain opponent, and you've cracked it. You're getting one of these huge fights. So it'll be interesting to see what Gregor does next. And well done to the guy for making such an emphatic comeback.
Yeah, and that'll pretty much do all my recapping for that event. Is there anything you want to mention before we move on?
No, just shout out Neil Magny. It weren't the most entertaining fight, but he got the win, and he just seems to be one of them guys who won't go away. And it looks like we'll get him against Chimaev next, if Chimaev can be fit enough in time, like August, I think they want to go. So yeah, hopefully that's the fight we get. It'll be really interesting to see how Khamzat deals with a guy like Magny, because he is legit. He is a top contender, and if Chimaev is not what we think he is, he won't win this fight. So yeah, good win by Magny. I think he was the underdog going into that one, and he pulled it off, and he goes into the next big fight now.
I think you're going to be upset to hear that Dana White, when speaking to Brett Okamoto today, said he wasn't really interested in that fight. So maybe we won't get that next.
How's that work? Who does he want to match Khamzat with? I'm pretty sure he wants to match him with Nick Diaz, and it's just ridiculous, because why would you do that? It's Magny has had his hand up for Khamzat. He's the only guy really who's had his hand up the whole time, saying I want to fight him. Mm-hmm. And for some reason they don't want to match him, because Magny obviously isn't a big enough name, and if Khamzat loses to him, it's going to kill him, isn't it? And obviously he's the next big guy, so I'll be interested to see who they match him with them. But Magny, no matter what, he'll get a good big fight.
Yeah, you'd hope so. That'll pretty much do that one. UFC 262 this weekend. We got the lightweight bout back on the line between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's second fight in the UFC. Charles Oliveira is a veteran, been around for about, I'd say 8 years, maybe 10 years in the UFC. Who knows? He's been here a while. Clash of styles in this one. You got the jiu-jitsu, very traditional stand-up Muay Thai shoot box style against Michael Chandler, who's got that low wrestling stance, the wrestling like credentials as well. And he seems to have power in his hands, as we saw in his last fight against Dan Hooker. What do you think the biggest factor and biggest key to victory for who you think is going to win in this fight is going to be?
I think we're going to see a lot of this on the feet. I think both of them will fancy it on the feet. Chandler will fancy knocking out Oliveira. He's been stopped a few times, and I think he'll think, if I can put a big punch on his chin, I might be able to take him out. Oliveira has improved so vastly that his striking is very, very slick now. So he'll fancy, beating him with the volume over a few rounds and eventually getting the knockout. So I think we're going to see a stand-up fight, and it's all about whose style comes out. For me, it's a very 50-50 fight. I'm not sure what to expect. How much do you read into Oliveira's win over Ferguson? Is Ferguson shot? But before that, he looked fantastic as well. Chandler, we've only seen a minute or two of him as well, but he looked great. So it's for me, there's more questions than answers right now, and hopefully we get some answers on Saturday night.
I was leaning towards Oliveira in the lead up to this fight for a long, long, long time. Like for since we heard it was booked. But as it gets closer, I'm kind of leaning the other way towards Chandler. And I believe it was Dan Hardy giving the breakdown. I can't remember who it was. But they were talking about the size being a benefit for Chandler because of how low he is and the ability he can get to the legs easier and also to land shots. They're coming from lower down, which is going to open up Oliveira's guard more. And so I feel like, especially with the high guard he does have, if Chandler chooses to wrestle in this one, I feel like he can take it to ground whenever he likes. And while Oliveira is an expert submission grappler, he's only really landing neck attacks recently, right? He's only throwing up neck attacks, guillotine, Darce choke, and he's getting you when you shoot in. And that's what happened to Kevin Lee, right? He shot in, he got caught in that guillotine. I suppose the armbar against Tony Ferguson was pretty impressive, but he didn't get the finish there, even though any other man would have tapped. But I feel like in Chandler's case, if he doesn't leave his neck out, he can take this to the ground and just dominate. We haven't seen Chandler submitted. Do you think it happens in this fight?
I don't. I think he'll be able to deal with Charles's attacks. I think he'll shut it down. If it goes to the floor, I don't think he's going to be super aggressive. He's just going to focus on maintaining position and dropping the odd shot and not getting submitted. Basically, I honestly think Chandler's going to fancy himself to knock him out. And we have seen Oliveira stopped a few times. He can be stopped. Chandler has got that low center of gravity, as you said, and I think Oliveira will be hittable, and I think that's what he'll be looking for. So he'll fake with the takedown, he'll come over with the right, and that'll be it. I think as you said, it is a 50-50 fight. I do lean towards Chandler. Oliveira's looked sensational, but I'm not sure how much to read into his wins. His win over Kevin Lee was the most impressive one, but how good is Kevin Lee? He seems to have lost every time. He's really stepped up, and then Tony Ferguson. He's just been battered by Gaethje, so how much to read into that? This really is the test for Oliveira. I want to see him. Is this his coming out party, or is this as high as he goes? You never know. He's a 30-year-old guy who's been competing in the UFC for a decade or something like that, so you would never write someone like that off. But Chandler's also been mixing it with the best. It's a really good fight, a really good 50-50 fight, and as I said, a lot of questions I honestly don't know the answer to right now.
Yeah, although we're both leading towards Chandler, I do want to ask you a different question. Do you think, regardless of who wins this, that the lightweight belt will change hands a couple of times in the next year?
Yeah, I think Poirier would have a better time against Chandler if he wins the belt. Oliveira's still a tricky fight, but I'd fancy Poirier to beat both of these guys. If McGregor wins, I'd also fancy McGregor to beat them both as well. I honestly do think McGregor and Poirier are the top two lightweights, and although it's not evident by McGregor's recent record, I do still believe that. But obviously you can't have the belt on the line for that fight. So I think whoever wins that fight, you've got to fancy Poirier after the last performance. I think Poirier would come and he would beat either of these guys.
And just before we do move on, if Poirier is to become champion, who do you think poses him the biggest threat in the top 5 right now? You got Gaethje and Tony other than these two.
Yeah, Gaethje's it depends how Gaethje bounces back, because there was a huge hole in. There was a big issue in that Khabib fight that he didn't look great on the ground. So does the next person he fights, do they just drag him to the mat or try to drag him to the mat? And how good is that defense once he gets there? Is he making any improvements? So that's all I'd worry about Gaethje. But I feel like Gaethje is capable of beating all these guys as well. I think he's capable of beating Poirier on his night. He can beat them on Oliveira and Chandler. He could beat all these guys. So he's a real dangerous threat. And then obviously you've got Islam. He's coming up. He looked fantastic. I know he's a couple of fights away, but eventually he's going to be the guy who, if Poirier makes a few defenses, Islam's there, they'll make that fight. That would be a huge fight, I think.
And we have two other lightweights on this card in the co-main event. Tony Ferguson, ranked number 5, trying to defend his legacy almost and keep himself in title contention against the up-and-comer Beneil Dariush, who's number 9 right now, but with a win over Tony, puts himself in that top 5. This fight's really going to, I believe it's going to take place a lot on the ground. And I think the reason for that is because of how easily Ferguson was taken down in his last fight. And you look at Dariush when he took on Diego Ferreira, who, in my opinion, is a far better grappler than Ferguson. Ferguson's got a lot of submissions, but I feel like stock and standard grappling, Ferreira's more threatening on the ground than Ferguson is. And Dariush was able to just dominate him. So I feel like Dariush in this matchup is going to take it to the ground and dominate Ferguson. Is that what you think, or do you think other stuff happens?
I think that would be the smart thing to do, because if you're on the feet with Ferguson, he's not going to knock him out, is he, Dariush? There's no chance he's knocking Ferguson out. So what he's going to turn the fight into is you punch me once, I'll punch you once. And do you really want to do that with Tony Ferguson? Is it worth it? He's slicing you up with elbows and every limb he's got. If there's an easier way to the victory and you think he can take him to the floor and he thinks that as well, I think that might be the route. I think that would be the smart route for Dariush. For me, it's all about how much Tony Ferguson's declined. Okay, so we know he hasn't looked good against the Justin Gaethjes and the Charles Oliveira's, but has he declined this much? I personally don't think Beneil Dariush is ever going to be a true contender at lightweight. I think he has had some really tough, close fights with fighters who Tony Ferguson back in his heyday would have just, murdered. So, I think if Tony Ferguson is anything close to his true potential, he should win this fight. It's just, is he that anymore? We're not sure. I hope he is, because I want to see him back in them big fights. Either way, I am backing him to win. I think we might see it on the feet, and I think Tony Ferguson, whatever happens, might edge it out.
I do think Beneil can knock him out. I know that Ferguson's chin has held up in every other fight, but the damage he took in that Gaethje fight was just crazy. And then you look at the damage he took in the Oliveira fight, even though he wasn't on the feet for a lot of it, he was still getting battered on the ground, So I feel like if anyone's going to knock him out, it's going to be in this fight or maybe the one after that. I just don't think his chin can hold up, and his age, and I think it's a lot of factors. That being said, if Ferguson can come out in the center, maintain octagon control, and walk Dariush down, put him on the back foot, I think he wins this fight. Because Dariush isn't going to shoot on him in the open mat. Dariush is going to take him to the cage and then drag him down. I think if Ferguson can be the one controlling the pace and the action and just make Dariush uncomfortable, walk him backwards, keep him circling, it doesn't really matter if Ferguson gets hit a couple of times while Dariush is walking backwards. The problem's going to be if Dariush is the one coming forward and putting all this momentum into his shots. So I really do hope we see Ferguson, because he's my favorite fighter in the UFC. So I really hope that he comes back in this one and showcases what we saw in the RDA fight, where he just walked RDA down and just dominated him, battered him. So if he can do that to Dariush, he'll win this one. But God, the wrestling, the thing we saw in that Oliveira fight is just stuck in my mind, and I just think that's what Dariush is going to go on this one, and as he should. Why does he want to lose? He's fighting number 5. Just do what you did do to win. You don't have to be spectacular.
Yeah, for that Dariush, any win will do here. For Tony Ferguson, it is a bit more about performance than anything else. I honestly don't know what to expect from him. I was listening to Dan Hardy as well, and he was picking Dariush just because he thinks people are picking Tony Ferguson based off of what Tony Ferguson was. He's not that fighter anymore, and he's not that fighter, but can he get close enough to being that fighter? The last 2 fights, he's looked poor, even against tough opposition. He had no offense. He was standing there. He was a sitting target for Justin Gaethje. He was just firing the same punch all fight, and he managed to get him with it. I think he landed one, significant shot in that fight. Pretty much nothing against Oliveira. For me, though, this is a drop down level. This is a couple drop down levels to Dariush. So is he still there? We've seen it with Cowboy. Cowboy keeps dropping down these levels. And you're like, okay, he's fought Gaethje, Conor McGregor. He probably wouldn't lose them. He probably wouldn't win them fights on his best day. Then he drops down to Nico Price. And we're all like, he should really beat Nico Price, doesn't beat him. Drops down to Alex Morono, still doesn't beat him. So it is right now, seeing how far Tony Ferguson has fell. And I'm just hoping that he's still got it. I'm hoping he hasn't felt too much. I want to see him. He's the one of the main reasons everyone's tuning into this card. He's a huge name. And it'll be a shame if he can't climb back up and potentially get back in the mix. I'd love to see it.
Final picks on that one?
I'm going to go Tony Ferguson. I just think if he's still got 70% of what he used to be in the tank, he'll get by Dariush. Because for me, on his day, Tony Ferguson, besides Khabib, is the best lightweight we've probably ever seen. He's been fantastic, and he's very lucky not to have a genuine, UFC lightweight belt. So he's been fantastic. Is it still there? I'm hoping so. I think it might be enough just to get by Dariush, and I'm hoping.
I'm taking Dariush, but it would pay me to see Ferguson lose. So I kind of low-key hope Ferguson does pull this off, but my mind says Dariush. So that's who I'm going with that one. Before that, we have women's flyweights. Caitlin Chookagian taking on Viviane Araújo. What do you think of this fight?
Good fight at Araújo. Who did you look great against last time? She's really impressed me in the last couple of fights. Who was it? Roxanne Modafferi, Montella Da Rosa. She looked brilliant in both of them fights. Jessica Ai's got a win over her. As I said, we always say with this division, it's really tight at this level. This is a 50-50 fight, but it's pointless talking about them because the champion is so far ahead. We've seen what happened to Caitlin Chookagian against Jessica Andrade. Then we've seen what happened to Jessica Andrade against the champ. So she got another good win over Cynthia Calvillo. She's, for me, Caitlin Chookagian, besides Andrade, she's the best of the rest. I would favour her in this fight, but does it really matter? Because are you going to put him with the champion again? I don't think you are. So she's got a lot of work to do, but this would be another big win. Cynthia Calvillo, then Vivian, and another one maybe to get a shot. But yeah, good fight. Two top flyweights, but neither of them are anything for the champion.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think with a win here, Chookagian does kind of position herself now as that number one contender. I mean, Andrade just got dominated by Valentina, so it's like Andrade's not getting a rematch anytime soon. I wouldn't be surprised if Andrade goes back down to strawweight, where I feel like she'd have more success even. So I feel like with a win here, Chookagian is the number one contender. On the other hand, if Araújo gets a win here, she could probably move herself into the top 4, top 5, and then from there, it's like one win and she's get a title shot. There's not many people lining up for a title shot in that division, so it's kind of a pivotal matchup for her, and for Chookagian, just kind of, keep growing. Like you said, one more and she can find herself back in the title shot.
Yeah, and it's anyone can beat anyone in this division, so it's all really close. It's a 50-50. All it takes really is one impressive win to get a title shot. I think it's Joanne Calderwood who's kind of in the mix right now. Joanne Calderwood and Lauren Murphy. Whoever win that fight will probably get the shot. But Vivian looks good in this one. She could potentially get that shot as well. So it is a big fight. Whoever wins this does position themselves well, but I just don't think Chookagian's got a chance of getting that rematch anytime soon, because the way she lost to Andrade, it's pointless. But if Vivian comes out on top, it's more interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Before that, we have featherweights, Shane Burgos and Edson Barboza. Should be a really fun fight. Should take place 100% on the feet, I'd imagine. And yeah, I'm taking Barboza in this one. I thought he looked pretty good in his featherweight fight so far. And I expect Burgos to look good as well as he did in the Emmett fight. Although he lost that one, I thought he looked pretty good in that. But I just think Barboza's just underrated, you know what I mean? Especially as a featherweight. Like that loss to Dan Ige, I thought he won. And look at what Dan Igue's been able to do since then. So what do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's a really fun one. I'm not sure what way I'm going on this one. Shane Burgos is kind of, he's very hittable. He was hittable, but then he took all the punishment from Josh Emmett, who is potentially one of the biggest punchers at 145. So how does he do against Barboza. I think Barboza's, as you said, he's also looked good. He was unlucky to lose against Dan. He looked really good in his last fight. He went to the decision and got that, but he hurt his opponent on several occasions. So this is a really, really good matchup, I think. But at the same time, Barboza's been knocked out, a few times. So, but Burgos will be confident of, putting his chin down, trying to stay out the way of some shots and landing a big bomb on him as well. So I can see both ways, but it's hard not to favour Barboza because he's been there, done that. He's been the guy for so long. And really, I haven't seen any issues with him at featherweight. I think he looks good. I think he still looks strong. He's showing all the good signs, and so I can't pick against him in this one.
Yeah, no, I'm on board with you as well in that one. But that should probably be our fight of the night there, I'd imagine. Unless something spectacular happens in the co-main event or the main event, I feel like pretty confidently that will be our fight of the night. Opening the main card, we have flyweight bout at bantamweight between Matt Schnell and Rogerio Bontorin. What do you think of this fight?
Why are these at bantamweight?
I think
I like Matt Schnell, but I prefer him at flyweight. I think he looks better. I think he really does look better there. So I'd prefer this to be a flyweight. But yeah, I really like Matt Schnell. I think he's a bit hittable. Rogerio will be confident of going in there and cracking him, but he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Matt Schnell was supposed to face someone with a bigger name, wasn't he? Alex Perez he was supposed to face. So this is a downgrade for him. I think he'll just want to get through this, pick up his check, and move on to hopefully to get that Alex Perez fight rebooked. But at this weight, it's never that easy. I think Brandon Royval came in on a few days' notice and caused a huge upset against Tim Elliott, didn't he? So I think Chanel's got to be on it, but he should get the win.
Yeah, I mean, Bontorin's last fight was the Kai Kara-France fight, right? Where he got knocked out after dominating the entire first round. I feel like it was 5 seconds left in the first round. He got knocked out. And in that fight, his grappling obviously is his main tool. He just dominated him for the whole round. I feel like after being knocked out, he's going to want to lean on that a lot. So I expect this fight to take place mostly on the ground. And I feel like if Bontorin can't pull off a submission, he's just going to grapple him for the 3 rounds. Because mentally, you just got finished, you're winning the whole round, and then you got finished with one punch. I don't feel like he's going to be confident to go out there and try and headhunt on Schnell, who could catch him back,
Yeah, I think that'd be smart. And obviously after the last one, he'll want to just lean on what you're good at. If you're able to dominate people on the floor, do that. It doesn't, because it's not worth taking the risk against someone like Kai Kara-France who can crack, and then you've gone from a potential win to a loss, and a bad loss at that. So. But despite the 2 losses, he's not, dropping down too far in levels. A win over Matt Schnell is still significant. If he can do that, and he's coming in, I'm guessing he's coming in on late notice unless one of his opponents fell out as well. So, huge opportunity to him. I'm expecting Matt Schnell to get past it, but you never know, especially with them both fighting at bantamweight. Who does that benefit? I'm not sure. Good fight. I think that'll be a fun fight for as long as it lasts as well.
Yep, should be a good one. That's the main card there. We'll go through a few of these prelims. Obviously, Jacare Souza's on this card, taking on Andre Muniz. Talk about a drop down in competition. I feel like for Jacare, this is a big jump down, especially because for so long we've seen him at that top level, taking on the top guys. What do you think of that matchup? And then pick out some of the prelims you want to chat about.
Yeah, I like the drop down. I think at this point, I think Jacare's done at the top level. I really do. I don't think. Obviously, we've now seen like Kevin Holland isn't a top guy, and the way he got knocked out by him was a bit worrying because he was just letting him hit him in the face clean.
He did go to decision at light heavyweight against the champ though, and I thought it was a pretty competitive fight. I thought Jacare looked like he could have edged the decision in that one. It wasn't an entertaining fight, but.
Yeah, maybe we should move up, but that was 2019 as well. And every year, I think he's still in, training and doing these things. He's had COVID. He's 41 now. For me, this is a huge chance for Andre Muniz if he's any good to get a big scalp. I honestly think for these younger, up and coming people, Jacare is there for the taking right now. 41, he's definitely on the decline. It's a huge opportunity for Andre Muniz to come in, make a name for himself off the back of a legend. And he is a legend, but sometimes you're in your 40s. That fighting's not for 40-year-old men, and I'm not sure we'll see that because I'm not too sure about how good Muniz is. But if he's if he's a talent, he'll win this one. If not, Souza will old man him to a decision, I think.
It's an interesting one. I'll throw it to you to pick out some prelims then. What do you want to pick out?
Yeah, I always like Lando Vonata, and he's one of them frustrating fighters. He always seems to be on the edge of becoming a really big talent, but he's got all this talent, but he gets hit in the face too much. Simple as that. He's lost. I think, did he lose his last 2 fights, or he lost to Bobby Green?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bobby Green was the last one, so I expected them to win that. I expect them to win that one, a 40-1 the original fight, but he didn't, and he didn't really get close to Bobby Green. Bobby Green was a very wary winner, so I'm happy to see Lando going down to 145. Mick Grundy, he's a guy from our neck of the woods. He actually trains at Cabon with Darren Till in my city, so he's a good fighter, known for his wrestling. And he had a tough fight last time out against Evolov, so. Yeah, good fight, good test for Lando coming down. You could potentially land something spectacular, or he could get a manhandled in this one. So I really do like that fight on the undercard. And then besides that, always good to see one of the Shevchenko's in there. She looked great last time out as well, and she'll be in there with Andrea Lee. And who else have we got? Yeah, we got Jordan Wright coming back, Gina Mazzani. It's a good card, very strong main card. The card's littered with fun fights throughout as well. So I think we'll be happy with this one. Last week didn't potentially deliver. I think no matter what happens, we're getting a good card at UFC 262.
Let's hope so. And let's not forget, there were 2 fights on the main card that fell out, and that was Nate Diaz versus, I'm blanking, Leon Edwards, and also Jack Manson was taking on, what's his name? Edmund Sharbazian. And both those fights fell out. Imagine if they were on there. This card would be one of the best ones we've had this year. But hey, it's still pretty solid, so hopefully it ends up being a good one. I'll jump some news now. First thing I want to ask you about was, did you catch Rumble's debut in Bellator?
Yeah, great fight. I thought that guy looked really dangerous. Who he was fighting like?
Mm-hmm.
He was huge. He was really big guy. The way he was putting his punches together was impressive as well. So I think Rumble's done well to come back from that, because I know the guy had only had 1 win in Bellator, but he's young, he's big, he's talented. I feel like he'll come back, and he might be a title contender. He looked really good. So even with a broken hand, so that was great. And Rumble was pretty harsh on himself post fight, but I think when he looks back, he'll like that win. It was a good win. He showed everything he needed to show at 30, whatever he is old. He showed heart. He showed a good chin. Then he showed his knockout power. It was a good performance.
So what do you think would have happened if he didn't break his hand? Because he broke his hand fairly early in that first round, and that seemed to be the narrative. He just wasn't throwing it for a while there. And then eventually he started throwing it, and he put Rumble on wobbly legs. And ultimately Rumble did a great job surviving that first round, came back out in the second and put him away. Do you think if he didn't break his hand, we could have seen an upset in this one? Or do you think it was still pretty Rumble-sided?
He hurt Rumble as much as you can hurt him, and I thought the fight was over. I was just waiting for the referee to pull him off, and maybe a more cautious referee would have. So it was that close. It was inches in it, and maybe if his hand wasn't broken, he'd be able to unleash stronger punches to put Rumble out cold. It was super close to finishing. That's why it's so impressive that Rumble did bounce back, and that guy will get another big fight, and he'll be fine. He looked great. It's no shame in getting knocked out by Rumble. He's been one of the best light heavyweights, ever. So there's no shame in that. And he's hurt him as much as anyone. I've never seen Rumble in that position before. So it was, very, very impressive performance from him, but also very impressive from Rumble as well. I think he looked good. I think he showed everything he needed to, and he moves on, and he gets a shot at the champ now.
Yeah, and that'll be a fun fight to watch as well. The other veteran that fought this past week was Fabricio Verdum over in PFL, taking on, I'm blanking on the name, Renan Ferreira is the name. And this was a controversial one because I don't know if you saw it, but Verdum had him in a triangle choke. I feel like he had an armbar slapped on as well, but he had him in a submission. And Ferreira tapped his shoulder, but the intention wasn't clear if he was tapping his shoulder to like touch him or he was tapping his shoulder to say, hey, I'm done. obviously he loosened his grip on submission and he ended up getting TKO'd. It's been overturned now. How did you see it?
I was surprised they overturned it because I weren't sure. Like watching the footage, I weren't sure whether that was a true tap. Like, was he tapping? Because when I watched it, I thought he might be tapping, but then he also might be trying to find Werdum's face so he can let punches go, and that's what he did. He tapped kind of twice and then immediately started letting punches go. So I did think that was what he could have been doing as well. So I'm really surprised to see them overturn that. Because that's his explanation as well. He said, I was trying to get hold of his face so it can unleash bombs, and for me it makes sense. But I don't think the majority think that. I think the majority think that was a true tap, but I'm not 100% sure. Hopefully just run it back. If there's that much controversy, it's a shame if he didn't tap to see Renan lose, but he just gets another big fight against the legend. So and it's hard to feel too sorry for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. But the thing with in my mind is the ref always tells you to keep going until he pulls you off your opponent, right? So in the case of Werdum, where you have this submission cinched up, you should definitely hold it until the referee's telling you to let go, right? Because the referee's the one that needs to see the tap. You can feel the tap, but 9 out of 10 times you can let go and it'll be all right. But the one time where you let go and the other guy puts you out, this is what we get, right? So I feel like in future, these fighters have to remember that you got to hold whatever you got until the referee stops you. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on that. Other news that we have, is there anything on top of your head you want to grab?
Diego Sanchez stuff's still rolling on. He's accused Dana White of sleeping with all the fighters.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's going for Cowboy. He's it's all strange. It's getting stranger, and he's not going away. He doesn't seem to be wanting to go away. So it's interesting watching all this play out. It's I don't know what I want to say about that, but yeah, it's just an interesting one. And Diego's always been a kooky guy. And it's just getting weird there. The training video of him getting punched in the face.
I think
because the problem is that Fabia is saying, "Oh, I'm protecting fighters from CTE. I'm doing this. I'm doing that." Then the next minute, he's got us fighting hanging upside down, throwing kicks at his head. It's all very contradictory.
Yeah, I think you should definitely get Joshua Fabia on the channel for an interview. I think that should be an objective for you this week.
I'd love that, but I just don't know how it would go. I'd imagine he'd want a handsome fee to do that. That's what they see to be going after, the money. And I don't know what it'd be hard not to laugh, wouldn't it? Really, because he's such a he's just a walking contradiction. Everything he says it doesn't add up. So that video was a weird one, and it quickly got took off YouTube as well, which kind of says they put that up thinking that'd be like a good thing to do, and it obviously weren't. And everything they do, they seem to think is in their favor, but it always seems to backfire. So yeah, it's weird, and I'm sure we're in for another week. It's only Tuesday. I'm expecting something mad to happen, and we'll speak about that next week.
Yeah, let's let that unfold. Last thing before we wrap it up then is Dan Hardy has asked for his release from the UFC, or he wants to ask for his release from the UFC. From what I heard, he couldn't get in contact with someone to ask for it, but that's his plan. Do you think it's a good move by Hardy? He's talked about going elsewhere. He did say fighting in Asia. He'd like to fight for Ryzen potentially, or one championship potentially. What do you think about a move to one of those, or just his departure from the UFC in general?
Yeah, I think he needs to leave. I think obviously there's the relationships broke down between Hardy and the UFC. Whatever happened, and he's got his side. I'm sure they've got their side. But what's the point in keeping him on that anyway? Because as he said, my contract's 8 years old. He needs to renegotiate that. Then he's got to try and get a fight against someone he actually wants to fight. He's not going to be fighting Chimaev. He doesn't want to fight him. He's made that very much clear. So, and then also he just let him go. I think the UFC, their stance is that he's not fit to fight, so we're not offering him a fight. But at the same time, why keep him under contract to fight then if you don't have any plan on booking him? So I hope they let him go, and that can just be the end of it then, because Dan Hardy does great work, whether it's on the UFC or on his channel or for BT Sport. He does great work, and he should be allowed to go off and explore and do whatever he wants. So hopefully the UFC starts answering his calls, and we can get a solution and put that one to bed, because I'd rather hear Dan Hardy speaking about his fights or speaking about other fights than, speaking about the UFC and his troubles with them. And all it takes is them ripping up the contract and we can move on.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good move for both parties, and I really do think there's a lot of matchups elsewhere that would be quite interesting for Dan Hardy. We'll see where Diego Sanchez goes. Potentially they could fight. That might be something fun to watch. But I don't know if anyone's going to take the risk on signing Sanchez after all this. But yeah, where do you think Hardy ends up? Do you have any prediction?
Well, he was saying he fancies Japan. He also said he doesn't want to fight Diego because at this point, whatever's going on with his head, taking punches to the head is not going to help that. So I would have liked to see Hardy stay in there. I think the Nick Diaz fight's fun. I think Condit's fun. If he can come to a resolution with the UFC, that'd be great, but it doesn't seem likely. I don't know where I want to see him. I honestly don't know where I want to see him. I think maybe if he goes to Bellator, a fight against Paul Daly could be fun.
Yeah.
If we go, it's all about opponents and not necessarily about the organization. I don't think Dan Hardy's got any aspirations to become a champion. I don't think he's thinking about that. He just wants some fun fights against some legends, and I think Paul Daly is in that line, and that's the one that popped out to me. But I'm sure there's some others as well.
Yeah. Well, that'll pretty much do it. You got anything else?
No, just can't wait. Great week of fights. As you said, it was a strong, one of the strongest cards of the year, and a couple of fell out, but it doesn't really affect it. We've still got a huge card at UFC 262. We're going to crown a new lightweight champion, which is crazy because the division seems to have been up in the air since October. So, 9 months or almost a year now. So it'll be great to get a new champion, and yeah.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.